if you are a leader or you own a business, you have done things that are harder than writing a book. It's just that you haven't done the exact things you need to write a book. So we break it into stages. That is really one of my strengths. I am a very list builder kind of person. So I want to know everything that's going to happen. And then I want to take all those items and break them into lists. And if those items need to be broken down, I want to keep doing that until it's not scary.
Welcome to the Women Choosing Growth podcast, where we bring you practical advice and guidance on how to grow your business and achieve success in your entrepreneurial journey. We feature inspiring stories of success, challenges of growth, and lessons learned from women entrepreneurs, industry experts, and thought leaders who have been through the growing pains inevitable as an entrepreneur. Whether you are just getting started or are looking to scale up your business, our show is designed to provide you with the tools, resources, and community you need to grow your business. Join your host, Tina, a lifelong entrepreneur and business growth advisor, as we explore topics such as marketing, sales, finance, leadership, and personal growth, all tailored specifically to the needs of women entrepreneurs. So if you're ready to grow your business faster and smarter, and learn from the experiences of those who have traveled the growth path before you, then this podcast is for you. Thanks for tuning in, and let's get started.
Welcome back, ladies. We have an amazing guest with us by the name of Amanda Edgar, and she is a successful entrepreneur who helps leaders turn their stories into world-changing books. She founded Page and Podium Press because she believes every story deserves to be shared. She's an actress turned academic turned author who found her purpose in helping others tell their stories. Welcome to the show, Amanda.
Thank you so much for having me, Tina.
I want to really hear about this actress turned academic turned author. I mean, that sounds like quite the journey, and I always love to hear a good journey story. So how did you become this amazing entrepreneur that you are today from being an actress?
Well, thank you for your kind words. Yeah, I am of the mind that you should do the thing that makes you happy at that moment in your life. And that I believe a well-lived life, you are building and growing and changing all the time. So what you thought in your 20s would make you happy is really often not what's going to make you happy in your 30s. So I have always had this kind of flexible approach to my life, and I try to keep my eyes open for opportunities and go where it seems like it's going to be a good fit. So I started out as a children's theater actor, which when people talk to me, I'm super animated. I think it is a carryover with a really cool program that was a grant-funded program to take theater, to take stories into rural communities to children that would not get to see live theater otherwise. And that is very similar to really what I do now. So I then went into academia. I was studying social movement history. In that role, I was asking people to tell me about participating in movements like BLM, like the Women's March on Washington, just thinking about what it means to be out there on the streets trying to change the world, even when things are dangerous or, scary or inconvenient, frankly. All the things that keep us from doing what we believe our values, would tell us to do. Mm-hmm. So anyway, that was actually a pretty seamless transition into what I'm doing now. I was getting people's stories, I was writing them into books, and that's the same thing I do now, except that rather than put my name on it, I'm helping people to get their book out with their name on it to really do amazing things with the book and also with their businesses and other career.
That's awesome. And I've seen how many of the people that you've helped have won some serious awards. So what you do is obviously you're wonderful at it. So I talk to entrepreneurs all day, every day, and I hear so many say, as I just said to you prior to recording, yes, I'm going to write a book someday, but it's not right now. It's going to be in the future. So there's people like me who want to, but not right now. There's people who are like, oh my gosh, I don't have a story to tell. There's a million reasons I'd imagine that you hear of why entrepreneurs aren't telling their story, even when they deep down know that they do have something that they can share.
Yeah. Well, there are two main reasons that I see, although everybody's, their own person, everybody has their own hurdles. I think we often want to blame things like time, or, I really want to take a course before I do that, which is really common, especially for high achieving women. Mm-hmm. We kind of believe if we could just get that one more credential, then we would finally feel ready.
Yes.
But
I feel
when
that.
well, same, frankly.
Yes.
Yes. When folks work with us, though, we do their book. Obviously, we either can coach or we take people through the idea, and then we do the writing and all the publishing. But
Mhm.
the other piece that's really, really important to me, that's at the heart of our business, is the author mindset. And so when I work with folks on getting behind the, oh, I don't have enough time, or getting behind the, well, I don't know if I'm a good enough writer, I usually see both fear of visibility and the curse of expertise.
Mhm.
So, the fear of visibility, if you're an entrepreneur, you already know we have all been in this space where it's, we're kind of questioning, am I really going to step out on that stage that seems so scary and vulnerable?
Mhm.
And with book authorship, a lot of times we don't know anyone else that has published a book. So we really don't know, what would it be like to be on that stage? What would it be like to have my story out there in a way that feels really separate from you? Somebody's reading it on the subway and you're all the way across the country playing on your laptop, right?
Right.
Totally separate. So what if they misinterpret it? What if they read in something I didn't mean? I won't be there. I can't stop them from doing that.
Interesting.
The good news is that's usually not what happens. People are usually not rooting for all the worst. But, I think the other piece is, if you are a values driven leader, if you are somebody who wants to change the world, I think deep down that you're going to have to step into a zone that's not your comfort zone. And you're going to have to just be really brave and trust the people you want to help. And then at the other side is the curse of expertise, which is that all of us are so used to doing what we do every single day that we forget that we are amazing and that we didn't always know what we know. There are so many people that really want those lessons and need those lessons. And that if you can share those lessons through your individual story, you are going to reach people that haven't been reached because they haven't heard it from your perspective.
I love that last piece that you said too. It's the perspective of what you're writing versus a general topic.
Yes, yeah, that's exactly right. Nobody should just go write a book on anything.
Yeah.
But if you're passionate enough that you've gotten to the point that you're ready to start, you probably do know some stuff.
Yes. Yes. So what about I'd imagine a scary part? I know I've thought that too. Like I literally said to you before we started that I have so much on my plate right now, which I think is probably what's going through all of our listeners' heads. Um, what is the process? Is it as scary as it seems to think about your topic? Think about like what are the pieces of my life that I'm going to share? What is the expert like? It just seems so overwhelming. So can you help us? Is it really overwhelming, or is it not as bad as we all seem to think? And
It's
when I say we, I mean the people who haven't wrote a book. We have many amazing women who have written books, but for all of us who haven't, it seems daunting.
Oh, yeah. No, it absolutely does. I have another book I want to write, and I'm kind of building up to, oh, are we going to do this again? 'Cause it's a very different thing to write your own stuff than
Oh,
somebody
sure.
else's. So
Shoemaker's child right there, right?
that is exactly right. Yes. Um, it does not have to be daunting. So, particularly if you are a leader or you own a business, you have done things that are harder than writing a book. It's
Sure.
just that you haven't done the exact things you need to write a book. So we break it into stages. That is really one of my strengths. I am a very list builder kind of person. So I want to know everything that's going to happen. And then I want to take all those items and break them into lists. And if those items need to be broken down, I want to keep doing that until it's not scary.
Mm.
So we have a whole structured process that we take people through. And it's the same process, whether you're doing our coaching package or whether you want us to write it for you. And essentially that is you're just chatting. And we try to make it so comfortable that it just really feels like having coffee with your friend and just sharing your experiences. Then when we get to the drafting stage, that is just chapter by chapter, right? So if you're going to have 20 chapters, no one can sit down and write 20 chapters. But you can sit down and outline chapter one, and then you can sit down another day and write the first section and then the second section. And eventually you do have a book. It feels very, very slow at first. And then usually around the middle, it starts to feel way too fast. And people are like, oh my gosh, this is a real thing. What have I done?
Yes, it's legit. We have chapters that are done ish.
Right.
Drafted. Let's say drafted.
Right, right. And that, I mean, that's a big thing we talk about a lot is get the draft down. Then we'll go back to it. And I do think that's one thing I see. Folks will a lot of times have a very clear sense of what they want chapter one to be. And a
Mm,
lot of times people say, I've written this in my head many, many times. Like I can tell because it's so polished. But then as you go on, it's usually around chapter 3 or 4 that kind of initial excitement and enthusiasm wears off. And so then it can be hard, particularly if you're writing something where there's a lot of vulnerability, if you experienced a trauma, as so many of us did, and you're having to dredge that back up.
oh, sure.
But at the same time, you're getting more experienced at it. So if you're working with us in coaching, I always find that people get so much more confident and just also better. They'll share drafts and say, oh, I don't know about this. And I'm reading it like, oh my gosh, but look where you came from, you
Mm,
know? If we're ghostwriting it, then you just get to read your story. We just deliver a chapter a week and you just get to read it back. And I think it's scary, but also delightful from what I've heard from authors. And then either way, really the polishing stage, I always suggest people get support. So either, that would be if you're working with us, we build that into our packages, but you can also hire a developmental editor. And at that point, they will give you a list of things you need to fix. You can usually get somebody to help support with that. And then always suggest that you either assemble a team for publishing or you hire a team. All those things, the cover design, the interior layout, the metadata, the marketing, that stuff is really hard to plan for if you haven't done it before. But
that's its
there are
own
so
expertise.
many. Yeah,
Yeah.
yep. There's so many people that can help you build out either your custom team if you want to build it yourself, or if you work with us, we have it all structured for you. So you're just doing the fun part.
All right. Let's go back to when you said you just have a conversation. So I have heard that because the writing process also seems like part of that. Like, I'm not going to sit down. And for people my age, I literally picture writing at like a typewriter for some odd reason. Like, nobody even has
Yeah.
typewriters anymore. But that's what I visualize. Um, Maybe the Misery movie.
Oh my gosh, Misery. The
It's
reference, my go-to reference is The Shining. Why? Why?
That's funny that we both go back to some horrible movie when it comes to writing a book. But so can people like do record if they were to, work with you or someone to write their book? Is it typing it out or could they do a video or how does that work if someone's just like, I am not sitting down and writing?
Yeah, so I would suggest always then one of our ghostwriting packages. And in that case, our smaller ghostwriting package, which is a really nice entry point if you're a business owner or you want to try your first book, and it's really meant to leverage people into your business.
Mm-hmm.
That is a little bit of a combination. So that is you're doing weekly sessions with your interviewer, but then you'll also get prompt sheets. And that's the key to it, right? Because if you just sit down and start talking, you may or may not end up with anything valuable.
Sure.
But when we put together, it's usually 4 or 5 pages of a Google Doc and, questions just like a worksheet you'd have in school. And we just ask you to fill it out, give us bullet points. Sometimes people will record a video and have it transcribed if that's, if you're a verbal processor, that
Yes.
makes sense. But we also have a larger ghostwriting package for people that are just like, I don't have time. I don't even want to get into this. And with that, it is all interview. You're sitting down with your interviewer for an hour and a half a week, and we ask you questions. But it's very often like what we're doing here, where folks will share things, and then I'll say, "Oh my gosh, that's so interesting. Say more." And sometimes people say, like, "That's interesting," which is what I mean by curse of expertise, right? We've told the
Yes.
stories over and over. But if you're writing it yourself, we do recommend that you do a brain dump first, which
Mm.
essentially does the same thing. It's just when it's writing it on the page, why does that feel so scary and permanent? It
Yeah.
does.
It feels slow for me. Like
Mhm.
I think that we
Yeah.
would I would definitely be an audio person.
Yeah.
That's for me.
Well, you're getting tons of support with our program just because, like I said at the beginning, that's really what we want for people is to really feel that they came out with more than a book. They came out with a mindset transformation.
Mhm.
So that's a very hands-on process.
Let's talk about that. We'll come back to like the end process and marketing because I think that, it's like great to have a book, but if it's only on your shelf, not so wonderful. So we'll come back to the marketing. But if someone's like, yes, I would like to write a book, but I have no idea. Is it my childhood? Is it my business? Is it my side hobby? Where do I even begin?
Yeah.
What do people do to kind of narrow down at least their first book?
Yeah, absolutely. So the process that we use is a trademark pending process called the memoir method. And we primarily are working with business owners. Now, if anyone kind of bristled at that term memoir, let me kind of clarify here. We certainly do not mean, some self-indulgent, you're just going to pour everything you've ever thought, not edited, just for friends and family. The memoir really is the contemporary way that business owners are sharing why they do what they do. And that is particularly true in my experience for values and mission driven businesses. Often that's women business owners really in our
Yep.
culture.
Makes sense.
And it's just the way that you're going to build your story in. So the memoir method is designed specifically to think about the beginning and the end of your story. We call this bracketing. So we figure out what is the specific piece of your life you want to talk about. So that can be things like we've had people talk about the founding of their business. We have a book we're working on right now where the business owner almost lost his business, which was actually shocking to me. I did not know that you could be kicked off your payroll program for missing payroll too many times. But they were threatened with not having access to QuickBooks anymore. And I mean, it was really a low point. So he was talking about that and how do we recover? We're going to pick that slice for you. The thing that people get kind of hung up on sometimes is, well, but do I put my childhood and my teenage years, my college years, do I put that in or not? And really that depends on what your message is. So we work with folks to figure out what's the beginning, what's the end of the slice of your life, and then how do we want to incorporate the other pieces of your background, and then how do we want to pull in this knowledge and wisdom you've gained throughout. So it's not just, I'm going to put that in scare quotes, it's not
Mhm.
just your story, but we're being really intentional and making sure that as you tell your story, people are coming away with so much value that applies to their lives, not just your life.
Mhm. That makes sense. So you don't know if your childhood doesn't have anything really to do with the business and your expertise, like leave it out. Maybe
That's
reference
exactly
it
right.
in a joke somewhere along the way.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So we worked with a woman who is a women's political candidate advocate recently, and her childhood was a really big part. She'd wanted to run for office basically since she was 12 years old. So
Wow.
there were all these moments where they'd been to the White House or they'd seen Bill Clinton speaking in the Walmart parking lot in Arkansas, and all these kind of random things, but that weren't really random, right? That actually wove
Yeah,
right into the fabric of her life.
totally.
And as we've gotten the feedback from readers, no one is saying, "Oh, why'd you talk about your childhood?" People are saying, I could see how clearly your journey shaped and how you got here and what the obstacles were that we wouldn't have gotten if we just, did a very narrow slice of her life, or, something that's a very traditional business book where we weren't weaving a story and we were just kind of telling people how to run for office. That's not going to connect in the same way. It's not going to get you that know, like, trust in the same way.
Hey, incredible women entrepreneurs. It's Tina Sue here. I know you're juggling a lot, growing your business, managing family time, and trying to find balance. Deep down, you know you're capable of so much more. But maybe fear or uncertainty is holding you back from achieving that dream business, that dream life that you deserve. That's why I created the Dream Big, Plan Bigger guide, a game changer for your business growth. This isn't just another goal setting document, it's your personal roadmap to achieving the impossible. Imagine having a clear vision of your biggest dreams, breaking through the barriers that hold you back, and reigniting that passion that fuels your journey. This guide is your roadmap to doing just that without compromising your family time or your personal priorities. You deserve to see your business thrive and still have time for what you love. Let's take this journey together. Download your free Dream Big, Plan Bigger workbook now at tina-sue.com and start making those dreams a reality. Now, let's get back to the show. So we talked about the process, but why would a business owner want to consider it if they haven't been considering writing a book yet?
Yeah, that is a great question. So I think a lot of times people realize that a book can really be leverage. So sometimes we'll call this a funnel, top of funnel, right?
Mhm.
A book is a really low price entry into your world. So, people can come into your world via social media, that's free, or they can come into your world via your offer. A book is somewhere in the middle because people don't, for whatever reason, people do not think about the $20 to buy a book as some huge investment. I'm sure you've done this all the time, right? You hear
Just
somebody
bought a
on a
book
podcast.
earlier today.
That's right. Like you'll hear somebody on a pod. I do this when I'm walking. I'll listen to a podcast. I'll hear an author, and I'll just while I'm walking, I'll just get Amazon up, look for the book, buy it. Sometimes I forget that I even did that, and there it is in my mailbox.
It was the previous podcast, and her book went out live today. So couldn't
Yes.
wait. Yes,
Well, be
exactly.
sure you leave a review. That is the,
I
the
did that as well.
awesome. I love it. Well, so we always think about that that's the way in, right? When people read that book, and first of all, you may forget you ordered that book, but it'll show up at your house,
Oh, totally.
and there is a 0% chance you're going to throw it away, right?
Yes,
So
yes.
you could have signed up for her email list, and I sometimes sign up for email lists and then unsubscribe right away. People do not throw away books. So when you sell a book to someone, you have kind of put a permanent marker of yourself in their home.
Right behind me.
And then when people read your book, ideally, they're getting to know you. We always try to write in such a way that when people read your book, they can hear your voice in their
Mhm,
mind, so that it's like a coffee conversation or a chat over happy hour, that they're really learning from you in a way that feels so casual and conversational and natural. We're not beating people over the head with a story or lessons. We really it's an intro, right? We want them to get to know you and your story. That's going to then get people into your business, and that's really helpful. But the other piece that I think people overlook is that beyond, book sales, beyond using that book to sell people into your bigger offer, which is the way people get ROI, you're also going to get so much clarity on your message. How many of us have had 4 to 6 to 8 to 10 hours just with a person that wanted to hear about our business?
mm,
That's what you get when you work with us in ghostwriting, right? Is we are just sitting there. It is one-on-one. We are asking you questions about your business. We are we try to be very uplifting and very supportive. So it's not, when you're sharing and you're kind of nervous, you're going to get critiqued or something. It's just an open sharing session. And over and over, one of the very first testimonials I actually ever got in 2010 probably was, we knew we would get a book. We did not know we would get so much clarity. That by talking through all of the things that you're thinking about, your story, the points in your business, your passions, and then having us go through it and put
mhm,
it together and group like with like and figure out the themes and the trends, then you get back something that is essentially a roadmap to why you do what you do. That's more than a book, because then when you're on
mhm.
your podcast, when you're on podcast interviews, you can talk about those same points. When you're getting ready, what am I going to put on social media this month? You have a whole list of stuff you want to talk about. If you're
Ton of
planning,
chapters.
that's right, that's right. If you do a newsletter, people will sometimes even pull chunks directly out of the book as either excerpts or rework the front and back into that little excerpt, and it's a newsletter for you. So you are also getting a really clearly branded set of content that came from you, but that has been cleaned up by professionals and by somebody that isn't so close to you and what you do, so that you can get some real objective feedback on it.
Okay. So what I'm hearing you say is the reason to write a book is to not only share your story and your expertise, which is why you do what you do and you love what, whoever's listening is why you do what you do. So might as well share it with as many people as you can. But then you also get all the benefits from the marketing aspects, top of funnel, all the
Absolutely.
things.
Yeah, and what I always try to encourage people to think about, if you work with a ghostwriter, you will pay at least 5 figures. If anybody's trying to sell you a ghostwriting that's under 5 figures, I would be really cautious about that. That's a big investment, certainly.
Hmm.
What I always tell people to think about, though, is, do you have an offer that is even a 4 figure offer? Are you doing paid speaking gigs? Because what we find is, once you have a book, your aura is different. Not just on paper that you're a published author, you've got this title to your name, you'll have reviews, but you just feel different.
Hmm.
And what we see from authors is if they had been speaking, if they had been out doing keynotes or even panel discussions, they level up in all the ways. So you really only need a few $10,000 keynotes to pay for that whole book. And then every one you get after that is just gravy, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you have a $5,000 coaching package, you don't have to sell that many from that book for it to already have a really substantial ROI. And since we're kind of talking about that, I will also share we do have have a freebie that's just a download to help you get the most ROI out of your book. So if folks want to download that, you can find that at pageandpodium.com/ROI. And that will also give you some marketing tips. We haven't gotten to that yet, but
Yep.
some marketing tips. But really, we try to encourage you to go for the really high value leveraged tips for your book. So that's things like bulk sales and also then leveraging for speaking gigs. And then your one out, your Amazon book sales. That's great too. That's helpful. But really the way to focus is to try to get the big ticket return.
Okay. So for someone who's listening that might already have their book, that download would be a great tool for them.
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, we encourage people that have not started yet to download that just because the cost can be such a detriment. And I find it's really helpful to reframe it in terms of an investment.
Mhm. Makes sense. You're investing in yourself in the future and in all those people who will listen to if it's and end up being on Audible or reading the book, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, I feel like I have a pretty good understanding of the why and the process. Up until now, someone has written this book, it's been drafted, it's been edited, it's been polished. Now, other than what you just shared a little bit, what is all the components from the marketing to make sure we get that ROI?
Yeah, absolutely. So the biggest thing is you want to think about, as with any marketing, what can you do over and over and over again for years? Because all marketing is about consistency, right? So
Mhm.
if you are somebody, for example, if you enjoy podcast interviews, that is for our company the number one way that we have seen people sell books. And you said you listened to a podcast and bought a book this morning, or was it a podcast?
She was a guest on our
Oh, she was a guest.
podcast, yep, a
Yes.
few months ago, and I knew her book was coming out, and today it came out. So, yes.
Yeah. So if you're somebody that really enjoys a media interview, it can be such a great investment of either your time or you can hire someone to pitch you to get you out in front and talking to people whose audiences are going to enjoy your book.
Mhm.
If you want to do social, I think, that can be really effective, but you want to think about how are you going to bring new people into your world that are going to be interested in the book. So that might be through, paid ads on social. We've seen Book Talk is obviously, a very kind of well-known thing at this point, and Book Talk and Instagram Reels can be a really great way to share just little nuggets of the wisdom or story that you're going to have in your book. Again, you've got that all. We compiled it already. So just, share some things. We have an author that's having a lot of success right now, just simply by looking for people who are struggling with what he was struggling with and just engaging them. So he works with Black men and boys who are really trying to kind of elevate their community, elevate themselves. He works with a lot of folks who were in the prison system and are transitioning out. So he just looks through Facebook groups and just comments and says, I'll be thinking about your son, or like, I know you can do it. You can build a life for yourself. And not only is he getting people to buy his book, which great, of course we want that,
Yes.
but he's getting such just a personal reward too. He wrote the book
Mhm.
to help people. And we just talked this morning. That is another way you're helping people then through your book that is in addition to your book. Even people that don't buy it, you're going to help them in that way. You're building all of this goodwill out in the world. And I really believe if you put amazing things into the universe, if you help people and add value, that always comes back to you one way or another.
Amen to that. I agree. And it makes me think the reason I did this podcast was because I couldn't help enough people with the time in my day. So the podcast was a way for me to help as many women entrepreneurs as I could. So you're having a book is similar to that of just reaching that many more people.
Yeah.
that you can't reach in a one-on-one call.
That's exactly right. Well, and I think that's also a good prompt for another tip that we share a lot. People don't think about, which is bulk sales. So you can either do, we have a lot of authors who are speakers or do different kinds of appearances like that. And
Mhm.
we just had an author. His book will be out on April Fool's Day, which is very fun. It goes with the theme.
Okay.
But he has two keynotes that he booked pretty recently. And just with each of them, he was like, hey, would y'all buy 100 copies and just have them available to people? And both of the organizations like, oh, sure. Yeah, I'll do that. And one of the reasons, I mean, that sounds like it would be harder. But the thing that I think a lot of people don't realize is that when you are getting contracted to do a keynote, there's usually a pocket of money for the keynote speaker, and there's a different pocket of money that's your marketing budget. And a
Mhm.
lot of times that is a pocket of money that they really don't have a huge plan for spending. So if you, as the author, are going to be speaking there, you can suggest, well, and give a bulk discount, right? You can usually do less than half price and still make a pretty good return, especially with a bulk sale. Ask them to put a copy on everybody's chair. What a delight, right? That is such
Mhm.
a return for the organization who is giving this gift to everybody. And then you've also got your book out there. You get the sale for the bulk amount, but then again, your message is spreading so much farther. And then the other piece, the other side of that is you also can do what's called a sponsored sale, which is effectively the same thing. But particularly if you're mission driven, values focused,
Mhm.
if there are nonprofits or other organizations that really are in the same niche as you, a lot of times, especially at the end of the year, people are trying to get some money off their books for taxes. You
Sure.
can suggest, do you do Christmas gifts? Are you sponsoring any conferences where you can contribute something to a swag bag? You can give them a great deal on your book, have it bulk printed. You can usually get them for $4 or $5 a piece. Sell them for half price or even a bigger discount. And that's another way then, so then your organization you're speaking to or the organization or the people you want to help, they don't necessarily even need to foot the bill. You can have a third party come in, get your book out there, and everybody wins.
That makes so much sense. And I do want to point out that nonprofits aren't always on the end of a calendar year. They have
Yeah,
your fiscal year ends all throughout the year. So that's like any time of the year, you should be asking your nonprofits in your world, in your mission about
that
their
is a great
budgets.
point. Great
Yes.
point. Absolutely.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Any time of year, we can ask for that.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we know the why, we know the who, basically anyone with a story and an expertise to share. We know the process, and we know how to market it afterwards. I think
Let's go
really,
do it.
if you're listening and don't already have a book, like what are you waiting for?
That's right. It's time.
It's time. If someone wanted to, like, I will resort back to what I said. What is the time frame? If like, do I get started now if I want to write one in 5 years or have it published in 5 years? What kind of what are we looking at for time?
Well, the answer is it depends, unfortunately. If you are writing it yourself, I always suggest at least a 9-month window to get through the whole draft, to get it revised. And sometimes you can get a head start on the publishing process if you want to. If you're working with a ghostwriter, it'll be much more bounded. Our smaller package is a 6-month package, our larger one is a 10-month. The thing to keep in mind is if you are self publishing, you can do that almost immediately. There's a short window of time for approval at the different distributors, but it's very, very quick. If you are somebody who wants to do a book contract with anything from an indie publisher, a hybrid press, is what we are, all the way through to, a big New York publisher, that is a much, much slower process.
Okay.
So typically, if you are going to traditionally publish a book, so that would be a book deal, a book contract where you're not paying in anything, the press is paying you for the rights to publish your book. If you're in that scenario, you really need to plan 2 to 5 years from the time that you're finished with the manuscript to the time you're going to hold it in your hand. So to give an example, I have a book that is coming out right around the time this podcast will air, and it's called "The Summer of 2020: George Floyd and the Resurgence of the Black Lives Matter
Mhm.
Movement." And I always think that that's such a great example because the date that we worked on it is right in the title. So we started working on that book. We actually had my co-author and I had plans to write it before George Floyd was murdered. as a follow-up to our previous book on Black Lives Matter. But we started talking to people, getting their stories right around the summer of 2020. And we had a couple of interruptions. I don't know any authors who went through their whole process without that. But it is just now coming out in spring of 2024. And that is just because by the time a press acquires your book, they still need a year to 18 months to make sure that, I mean, first of all, to get it in the pipeline, they've got other authors that are kind of first come, first serve. So they've got to get those out. They want to make sure the marketing and promotion's built up. And again, it's not going to be your turn right away. So the traditional publishing process is a long, long timeline. Then the other end would be self-publishing. Sometimes people are like, you know what, let's just file the brief. Let's just get the book out there and I'll start promoting it and it'll be available from the beginning. So you don't need then that big pre-order build. You know, you're not going to need the pipeline build to get through a big traditional press. So you can just go much more quickly. I don't know if that answered your question.
What are the benefits of doing one versus the other besides
Yeah,
time?
so we have a video on this, and we also have a blog post, and I'll share the links with you so you can add them to your show notes.
Perfect.
But
yes.
time, expense, and control are the three things you need to think about when you're thinking about your publishing path. Time, you can go much faster on your own than you would with a traditional publisher. Cost, if you're doing it on your own, you're going to pay for the whole thing up front. A traditional publisher will not charge you anything and will often pay you, of course, up front in the form of an advance. And then in hybrid publishing, it's in the middle. So you're going to pay some in, but you'll get much, much higher royalties as your book is selling. And then the last being control. Traditional publishers are not really interested in what the author thinks, for example, about the cover design or the title. You get it, and that's what you're going to get. And I know of a small handful of authors who have successfully lobbied for their covers to be changed after they were designed, but it is very, very rare. Editorial as well. They can really make any changes they'd like. That's part of the contract you sign. So if you want, total creative control, the only way you'll get that is self-publishing. Because if you're working with any kind of press, we have to make sure that your book is on our brand as well as your brand. And traditional publishers are even more like that. They're fronting the whole entire investment. So they want to make sure that they have control over the product that's coming out.
I mean, realistically, that
it
makes
does.
sense.
It's unfortunate. I know a lot of
if they're doing it on their brand, they should probably say what that brand looks like.
It's hard. It's hard because especially cover design and title are the big rubs for people. Those feel just so like the spine of your book. They're right at the center. So often
it is like whether you're going to pick it up at Barnes and Noble or not, if it's random and you're just walking past
that's
it.
true. It is so important. The good news is, and I talk a little bit about this in the video and the blog post, the good news is if you're working with a traditional publisher, first of all, you'll be able to see the other titles they've published. So you can see like, oh, okay, the covers look beautiful, or I'm not going to work with this press, are really your options. But they know what they're doing. And I think that is a really hard thing, especially, if you're a high achiever, if you're really independent, you're used to doing, you were the person in the group project that did all the work while everybody else just hung out. It can be so hard to just step back and say, you know what? My expertise is in the content. My expertise is my story, the wisdom, the message I want to share. And I brought on professionals because their expertise is cover design. Their expertise is, titles that sell. But I don't think you can go wrong. It just really is. You just got to weigh pros and cons. Usually there's no one right answer. It just depends on what's important to you and what your vision is for going forward.
Okay, that's perfect. And we'll put that link in there so that people can educate themselves and make a good decision. And we'll put all of your information to reach out to you if they would like to hire your team.
That's great.
To help them. What are your last words of advice for these listeners of ours?
Well, I think the big thing is if you're thinking of writing a book, and even I find a lot of times people are secretly thinking of writing a book. So they want to write a book, but there's something that keeps them from sharing it. I usually think that has to do with if you don't share it, you can't fail publicly. Yeah.
100%. You and like 3 other people know. Well, now all of our listeners know too.
Well,
So apparently I put it
the
out to the world.
pressure is on now. We're all going to follow up and make sure you do it. Yeah.
Exactly. You'll be on me too, like,
That's right. I
"Tina."
just wanted to follow up, just see how's the writing coming. Yeah.
Yes. How's the writing going?
But what I wanted to say was if you are in that place and you really think that you want to do it and you're not sure, just really think about why do you want to do it? Because what I find is when we really
Mm,
face down how I'm going to get really dark here, apologies, but how short life is, so
mm,
few people follow through with this. We know from data that about 81% of people believe that they should write a book, that they have a book in them. We also know that only about 15% of that group ever even starts, only 3% finishes, and only 0.6% actually publishes it. I
point 0.6.
know.
I thought that was the 15%. I thought that was low.
Yeah, it is. I think it's kind of easy to get fooled and kind of feel like, well, everybody else is kind of, you don't think this, I don't think, but like everybody else is smarter than me. Everybody else has better things to say. I don't, not true. It's just that people followed through, right? It's just that moment of saying what I have to say matters and what I have to say can help people. And yeah, you just got to do it. You got to take the leap. I wrote on LinkedIn recently, I really wish I had written my first book earlier. And it took so many people telling me, you have got to write a book. This is a book. This is not some academic journal article nobody's going to read. You've got to get it out there. And I wish I had started earlier. So take the leap. Come join all of us. You can be in the 0.6% and we will, yeah,
That's
we'll
crazy.
all cheers and celebrate you and it'll be an amazing experience.
Yes, and I wanna highlight something you just said there too, that, someone else might have already written the book about the expertise or the topic, or in my case, business advice of some sort. But what you said earlier in conjunction with that is it wasn't in your voice, it wasn't in your story. So that topic might be out there in 10 other books, but it's not the same as what you as in the listener is going to write. It is a different voice. It is a different view. It's a different perspective, a different mindset of that particular topic that might be
Yep.
common, more common.
You are going to find the unique thing you have to share through the process. So even if you can't articulate it now, bring your story, bring that thing you want to share. It always comes out in the wash.
I love it. Thank you so much for being here and sharing all of that. I learned a lot about the process, and well, now I shared it with the world. So apparently I'll be having a book here in a
I
few years.
cannot wait to put it on my bookshelf. Truly.
Me too.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please be sure to hit subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. The Woman Choosing Growth Show is not just another podcast. It's a tribe of women helping each other grow. So please, share this podcast with all the women entrepreneurs that you would love to see succeed. If you'd like to know more about customized business advising through Cultivate Advisors, download business tools, or sign up for upcoming events, visit www.womenchoosinggrowth.com. Once again, that's www.womenchoosinggrowth.com. Remember, we are in this together. See you on the next one.